All right, welcome everybody to another episode of Free Thinkers Anonymous. Here with my co-host Jeremy, and we got a special guest today. We got Lycee here with us.
Hello.
So Lycee is another person that we know from the visual effects industry. We've worked with her in the past, and she is another LA transplant that has exited the area, just like myself. So one of the things that we wanted to look into was just the visual effects industry and LA in general, just trying to get a vibe and get a feel for why people might decide to leave the area, kind of uproot themselves and find somewhere else that might fit a little bit better with what they're looking for a place to live. So yeah, Lycee, if you could just tell us a little bit about your story. Like, for instance, where are you living now?
Currently, I'm living in a bit more of a rural, farmy kind of town. It's called Tijeras, New Mexico. It's outside of Albuquerque and it's in the mountains. So it's very green, very lush. It's not flat desert land.
Hmm.
And I now have chickens and ducks and turkeys. I've never had that before. It's been quite an adventure, but albeit I've never had land before either.
Mm.
So it's been a really nice shift. What it came down to for Larry and I, we had gotten ourselves into a situation where we had asked our in laws to move with us to help with the kids. And we sold our 3 bedroom house for a 6 bedroom house in Santa Clarita. And we were sitting on a very small plot in a very large house.
Mm.
And the house never seems big enough when you have two families living in it.
Hmm.
And my job had gone remote because of COVID.
Hmm.
And my husband's job moved to Anaheim. Now, if you're familiar at all with LA traffic, you can drive 5 miles away and be stuck in traffic for 3 hours.
Hmm. That happened to me before when I was working in Hollywood.
And I say that because it's a true story, right? For everyone who's ever lived there.
Yeah.
And he would have to commute from Canyon Country, which is just a little bit past um, Santa Clarita. He would commute from Canyon Country to Anaheim every day,
That's going to be like a 2.5 hour drive?
one way. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I mean. And it's 2 hours from like Studio City, and Santa Clarita is another at least half hour further north.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was killing him. He was starting to tailspin, and the trajectory wasn't good. And there just was nothing about our situation, and none of it was sustainable. My mother in law was driving me crazy. I was driving her crazy. We all started drinking too much. And it got to a point where it didn't matter how much money we made. Um, we were just unhappy. But I had the opportunity to move to Albuquerque and work for a hub that they have out here. And my husband's family lives out here as well in Albuquerque. His sister, his aunts, his uncles, all of that. And I just thought, you know what? This is, there's a reason I'm being shown this. I told my husband, you know what? Let's go. I have a job offering in Albuquerque. Your family's out there. You're headed for a nervous breakdown. Quit your job, which his job, he was making like 150 a year by himself. But again, it's not worth it. It's not worth his livelihood, his home life balance. He says he doesn't even remember his daughter for the first 3 years.
Hmm.
That's awful.
Yeah, that's horrible.
No one should have to live like that. And no amount of money is worth that. And it's it's a gift to see that. It's a gift to be able to realize that this is not going to go anywhere. This is not going to make you happy. you need to go. You need to change everything. That dynamic, as well as there was a bunch of surrounding families that we were all friends with. And one family started going through a divorce. One family was dealing with the husband having an affair. Another family, they weren't bad, but the husband, he worked a lot. The daughter was going to college, but I want to say they were probably the only mentally stable. So that was another contributing factor. And then politically, we were paying so much in taxes. And a lot of these taxes and propositions have all this hidden crap in them. For example, in California, I believe you pay 3 different gas taxes. And of course, every time it hits the ballot, it was for the children or for the roads or for the fire prevention program.
Yeah, it's never what the money goes to.
Right. None of it. Our roads still suck.
Yeah,
There were still fires every year.
getting worse.
The children, the schools were just going down. The
Hmm.
ratings were just going down. These taxes were supposed to be for homeless, and the homeless were just becoming more aggressive, just overwhelming amounts of homeless. And at that point, because of COVID and because of some different policies that had been implemented, the homeless were being bussed into California.
Hmm.
And the problem with that is your now state problem is becoming a federal problem, and federal was ignoring it.
Hmm.
And I do have a unique perspective on the homeless situation because I came from homelessness when I was a child.
Mm.
So I do have a behind the scenes look at what some of the issues were. Mind you, some of the issues. You could go up to each individual homeless person and there is a different issue, and none of it is getting resolved. Not one, because they keep trying to lump it all into one issue, and that's not going to solve anything.
Hmm.
So it was the best decision we could have ever made getting out of California. We were still, despite making over $200,000 a year, still felt like we were living month to month. And when we sold the house in Canyon Country, we moved out to Albuquerque, right outside of Albuquerque, bought a house on 2 acres of land, bought a rental property, bought 3 plots of land in a Rio Rancho, which is a very quickly growing town. And we bought, and my in-laws, they bought their own house.
Wow, that's amazing. That's quite a change in lifestyle
Yes.
from being like kind of squeezed into a single home. I mean, I know just living with my mother-in-law, there's definitely some days that both me and Liz are like, hey, could we get the next place we move to a mother-in-law suite? You have your own space, and then we'll have our space, and then we still interact all the time. But as long as we have our own space where we can do our own thing, that makes a world of difference.
Mm.
You need to be allowed to make your own mistakes without feeling like you're constantly being judged. And
Yeah, totally agree.
that is essential for a budding family. And not to mention, to tack on what an amazing world this is, the universe in itself. About 6 months after moving out here, we found out that my sister-in-law's husband, my brother-in-law, had cancer.
Oh no.
We've been out here 2 years now. He just recently passed, but we were here for her. That would not have happened had we been in California still.
Yeah. And that's a game changer.
We were here for her. We were here for my niece, who's also my goddaughter, and nothing replaces that.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean family is the primary thing.
Mhm.
Like everything else comes second for sure.
No doubt.
And I will say, my husband, sometimes he just kind of looks at me and he's like, I'm happy. And I'm like, it can happen to you.
Yeah.
It's almost as if he wasn't expecting a change so quickly. I mean, my kids, they go to private school now because, I mean, let's be honest, Albuquerque doesn't have the best schools.
No, definitely not. pretty much any state in the South doesn't, aside from kind of Texas, but that's pretty much the only one that's comparable.
Yeah. Well, and not just that, my kids, I didn't want them to get caught up in an agenda.
Hmm.
I absolutely hate the amount of politics that are going into the public school system right now.
Mhm.
It's dumbfounds me. I'm
Oh,
like,
I agree.
can we teach them, I don't know, history so that we don't repeat it, and moral foundation and how to do their taxes?
Right, right. Yeah, no, practical lessons in public school generally don't really happen. Neither do critical thinking skill lessons, unless you happen to be in like a gifted and talented program at a nice school. Otherwise, it's not going to happen in public school for sure.
They're really happy with the school. There are a lot of aspects that we do miss about California, but it's mostly a couple of friends. And oh my God, I miss the vastness of LA. You could go out at any time and there was something going on.
Hmm.
Out here, I mean, things close at like 6.
Oh yeah, around here, most things are closed on Mondays. Like Mondays and or Sundays, you can just assume that half the businesses are closed unless they're chain businesses.
Right. And we can't get pizza to deliver to our house. It's too remote.
Same, same.
What?
Damn it.
No.
Yeah. Actually, we finally found a local place that'll deliver to us. It's actually inside of a gas station, kind of like a little building connected to it. But that is the only place that will deliver to our house. Every other one is like, nope, you guys are too far out there. I'm like, oh
Yes.
man.
I'm like, I'm not even 15 minutes from you. And then I feel
Hmm.
like going into the whole LA spiel and then I give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Too much energy spent. It's very much a European mindset here. Because for me, Santa Fe is 45 minutes from here.
Hmm.
That's like me going to work in LA.
Oh yeah.
Like, that's not far.
Well, it's actually interesting you say that because for me, my drive time, if I had to commute, is actually about the same now as it was in LA. The only difference is in LA, I'd be traveling 7 miles. Here, I travel 45 to 60 miles. But you have to travel 45 to 60 miles in any direction to get pretty much anywhere that has much of anything.
Yeah.
Going in just to like the nearest Target is a half-hour drive minimum. So
It is fascinating because I save so much money through my laziness.
right. And the other thing is you save so much money and time by planning those trips because it's not just like, oh, we need one thing from the stores. So you go 2 blocks down and you pick up something from the closest Publix or whatever.
Can you please explain that to my husband? Because he still is like, oh, I forgot something.
Hmm.
Okay, see you in 20 minutes or 40 minutes.
Well, it's the wear and tear that you put on a car along with gas prices translates to about 67 cents. I've always calculated it out as like $1.50 or so because it's easier for me to anticipate the actual expense.
Now I'm wondering, is that a federal calculation or is that per state?
It is a federal calculation, but almost all states use it as well.
I mean, it's going to be different from Idaho to California.
Yes, but generally speaking, they don't really care about the difference because the only real difference is the cost of gas. Cost of repairs are about the same regardless of where you are because I mean it's all just manufactured parts that get transported in and then mechanics get paid an hourly wage that typically is on par almost anywhere in the country.
I see.
Yeah.
I was going to say, now that my husband knows that moving isn't the end of the world and that uprooting our family has actually made us happier, I think he's addicted now because he started looking at villas in Tuscany.
Oh wow.
Ooh.
You could buy, I am serious, you can buy a villa in Tuscany in one of those small towns, 3 stories high. It looks like a freaking restaurant slash bed and breakfast amazingness. I can't even describe it to you, but you could buy them for like $300,000 American money.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah, I was finding places online for like 80 and 90.
And my husband's like, so when do we go? Yeah. And I told Larry, I said, well, when we retire, you get a pension. Let's go.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
I'll live in Tuscany.
Oh,
I mean, there is nothing actually keeping us here, with the exception of the fear that we won't make money.
Mm.
hmm.
And that
Well, and
fear is
also
worldwide.
immigration laws.
Yeah, but even then there's a process.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's definitely a process, but most immigration laws, particularly with the EU, because they do have a lot more social programs that are a lot more effective than what we have in the
Yeah,
US, that translates to a lot more expense for people that can't kind of hold their own and benefit the government and society as a whole. So if you come
yeah,
in and you're generally going to be a drain on resources, they're much less likely to allow you to live there long term.
right.
But that said, I mean, there's still exceptions.
That makes sense. But I mean, if you really look at it, Americans are taxed just as much as a lot of these places, but it's not going to the correct things. So we're not benefiting in the same way.
Yeah, so I guess we'll wrap it there. And thanks everybody for tuning in and be sure to come in and check out the next one.